Hello. I'm sorry that I haven't been with you for quite a few days. I have been reading and thinking about videos that I would like to post. One of them is about I'm reading the history of Russia pre-revolution, pre-1917, because I'm curious about. Um, I'm curious about why the English have this animosity towards the Russians. Now, I understand it's about resources and this and that and breaking it up and all kind. I know, but there is more to it than that. There is a certain animosity there that I can compare to the animosity they felt towards Spain and the Spanish Empire and so on. So I want to see if I can see a thread, a reason why, you start pulling and the whole jersey becomes undone. So I'm reading quite a lot about that, among other things. So in any case, that is the reason why I haven't posted anything for quite a few days. Now, I'm going to talk about algorithms today in the social media and the companies. And I must say at the beginning that as far as my own personal experience is concerned with Google or with YouTube, for example, everything that they um, suggest to me, most of it is, a lot of it is repetitive, but sometimes, quite often, actually, I see something that really interests me, or that. So the algorithm, as far as I'm concerned, is quite is quite correct. Actually, things that interest me and things that I haven't heard before. For example, someone that I had never heard of is a South Korean philosopher called Byung Chul Han. He's South Korean. Uh, he was born in South Korea, and he's a. I looked him up, and he's a cultural theorist living in Germany. He was a professor at the Berlin University of the Arts. Okay, his name, did I tell you? Byung Chul Han. You might have heard of him. This is the very first time. So he was a professor at the Berlin University of Arts and still occasionally gives courses there. His work largely centers around critiques of neoliberalism and its impact on society and the individual. And so I've got quite a few. Well, one thing, and it interests me, and I heard it in the Spanish translation, and I thought this is interesting. So since I clicked on it and I listened to it, to his talk on it, and now I'm getting more and more. So I'm going to give you a summary in case you have never heard of it. Most of it actually is, you've heard it before, but it's the way that he concises and summarizes his whole viewpoint about what is happening in society at the moment. He concentrates on mental control by the, what shall we I'm going to call them they, okay? What do we call them? The financiers, the elite, the he keeps talking about multi-billionaires or corporations, the ones that seem to be in control, in power at the moment, and that is what he's talking about here. And this one particular talk is about collective psychosis. And he says you might be part of it, you might be involved in it without even realizing it. Mental psychosis is not a metaphor. Mental control experiments, we all know, have been carried out for a long time now. It started quite naturally in advertising, that particular way of advertising, saying pretty much anything to get you to buy the product, to get you to consume, to buy that product. This is in the beginning of the 20th century. But then, little by little, and step at a time, as it were, the same technique was used for other purposes, for political purposes, for example, for political propaganda. So now it has developed into techniques of mind control, much more effective, much more well. Let's see if you agree, because I'm going to suggest that some of the things he says may sound exaggerated. You might consider them exaggerated, but I'm telling you what he says for you to consider. Certainly the mind control aspects of it, much more sophisticated than they used to be. He says we know that the CIA developed mind control systems. I don't think that that can be doubted for many purposes. Initially, for torture in some cases, or, even destruction of life, let me put it that way, without the need to touch the victims, without the need to touch them physically from afar. You didn't need to come near them. Not them, the oppressors, let us say. They didn't need your oppressor doing things to you, but you yourself is not that your oppressor is necessarily doing things to you anymore physically right there, but you yourself are doing those things to you yourself. In other words, not forcibly, but even voluntarily. I read somewhere, he says, that there are about 2,800 billionaires who control more wealth than half of the world's population. So that would be about 4 billion people. In many cases, they didn't need armies, not for their own population. I'll come back to this point at the end as a conclusion. They created, he suggests, a mass psychosis where vassalage and subjugation is confused and seen as liberty. He says, for example, in the 1980s, during the Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher era, when the neoliberal era started. In Europe, for sure, nationalized industries were given or granted or were sold to private corporations, were put into private hands. And some essentials like water and electricity, perhaps we didn't mind the telephone system so much. You can survive without it, I suppose. But water, electricity, essentials were put in the hands of private corporations for profit. Then, of course, in the 19th, Blair and Clinton would continue with this. But since then, he states that anxiety levels among the population have increased by 1,200%. Depression cases of depression have multiplied by 8. Let me put it this way, doing away with one's life among the young, for example, increased by 300%. And while this is going on, the wealth of the top richest 100 people has doubled, multiplied by 50. This is not This is not a correlation or a coincidence. This is cause and effect. The control of the mind, which he calls psychopower. Really a sort of a Jeremy Bentham's Copernican, you remember that, where the slaves or prisoners accepted their own chains chains all bought now on Amazon, next day delivery. People are living inside within a collective psychosis, a social madness, so perfectly designed that is now confused with normality, with being normal. And he says, why? Okay, a dead person does not consume stuff. A psychotic person does. A dead person does not work 3 jobs or 60 hours per week. A psychotic person does. The question is not, why are you feeling so down, so badly? The question is, he asks, why do you, knowing what is happening to you, knowing all this as you do, continue playing their game? That is the question. The media manipulation manual has one golden rule: never allow victims to identify identify who their real aggressor truly is. That is why when you search for the sources of your unhappiness, of your depression, of your discomfort, you're going to find a multitude, a whole buffet of convenient culprits, the guilty ones. Who are they? Social media networks, because they distract your attention. They're bad for you. The pandemic traumatized you. That's why now, whatever, technology is isolating you. The fast speed of life is overpowering you. Immigrants are taking your jobs, yes. Each reason or each answer or each explanation contains in itself a sufficient amount of truth, or they are partly true, and so they are very credible, yes. But the problem is that is partly, only part of the reason. He suggests it is not the whole reason, because it omits the main ingredient, the crucial element. All these tools were actually brought about and created by the same group of people. And now they are also, having created the problems, they're also selling you the cure for such ills. Look at the smoke screen on all of this. Don't confuse the shadows, which are real in many cases, in some cases partly real. Don't confuse those with the real thing, reality itself. Because while we debate whether or not TikTok causes teenage depression, which is a good debate, and many people would agree, and others will think that is too exaggerated, but whether it does or not, the investment funds which own and control these companies finance also the private psychiatric clinics and the antidepressant medicaments. So while we debate about digital addiction with the C, it's late at night. While we debate digital addiction, which does exist indeed, these same investment funds design algorithms specifically calibrated to exploit and increase dopamine conduits, which they themselves studied and financed in their neuroscience labs. In other words, this is the perfect business. Create the illness, control the diagnosis, the diagnostic, monopolize the treatment. They need you to believe that you are suffering, that your anxiety, your suffering, your depression is a technical problem in need of a market solution. If collective psychosis were to be recognized for what it is, a deliberate strategy for domination, deliberate strategy for power or control, the system would collapse. That is why billions are invested in think tanks that churn out studies on individual resilience while systematically destroying the community structures that could have protected you in the first place. The community, for example, as it was throughout time, which was destroyed in these last 300 years with the capitalist system, but free trade was okay, but it's no longer free trade as such. He calls it, you will see, cannibal capitalism. But talking about the community, of course, before people die of illnesses, they got ill and diseases and cholera, and even if you go way back, leprosy, and so on. But they didn't seem to have had a lot of mental problems. They would be worried, but they didn't have mental problems. So not really anxiety, not really depression as we know it today. That comes from, to a large extent, from isolation. This emphasis on the individual, the individual, the individual. And we destroyed the community, which was so helpful to us all. All we have left really at the moment is the family, and this too is disappearing. The destruction of the family is the ultimate weapon for you to be totally isolated. So that's why they finance research on this so-called, he calls it the corporative mindfulness. We'll see what it is in a minute. While at the same time, designing work environments calculated to break you. Keeping you distracted is working perfectly. You spend energy fighting made up, meaning artificially created cultural battles that were not there in the first place, while they consolidate the greatest wealth theft in history, he says. The protocol to manufacture, to fabricate collective psychosis was perfected in the labs for psychological warfare in Fort Bragg during the Cold War. But its massive application started when they, of Wall Street and other places, bought these military techniques to be used on the civilian population. The formula is devastatingly simple. 3 phases, he suggests. Fear, first fear, then confusion, and then solution. So we have 2,755 billionaires decide the psychological destiny of 8 billion people. Let's look at the phases. The first phase, fear. And it is not just about frightening you. It's about hacking your brain. Hacking, he says, hacking your amygdala, the primitive part of the brain that processes threats. They invested decades studying the exact doses, so to speak, the exact doses of terror that can paralyze you psychologically to a certain extent, but not kill you. You continue to function. You think that you're okay, you function very well, but without thinking, without deliberating, without questioning. When we were peasants and poor and illiterate, we could think, we could question. We were kind of cunning, as a matter of fact. We didn't believe everything, yeah, especially coming from the Lord. I mean, the crafty peasant, no one could cheat you very easily. Lost that. The collective nervous system is saturated now with constant, continual, contradictory, that's the thing, contradictory threats many times over. Terrorism is in every corner. Disease, illness like the 2021 are inevitable. Climate collapse is imminent. What happened to that? Will that come back? I wonder. Artificial intelligence will replace you. Immigrants will take your jobs. The economy will collapse. I know that some are only too real. Yes, I accept. Others are not. Others are so, half-half. Some are true, indeed. Others are exaggerated. But that is not the point. The point is that the truth, the real truth about each one, whether it is true or not, is irrelevant. What is important is the doses, the precise doses of fear, always, continually, all the time. It doesn't matter whether it's true or half true or not true at all. There you are, the threatening thing, that's the point that he's making. Continually. Internal studies by Goldman Sachs leaked in 2019 reveal that maintaining a level of increased cortisol sustainable on the public at large increases impulsive consumption by 47%, reduces political participation by 62%. I don't know, this is from 2019. So that was before the thing, It could be higher now. Chronic fear is the mental state more profitable or cost-effective or worthwhile, call it what you will, ever discovered. Fear. Okay, the second phase is even more sinister. Made up, artificially brought about confusion. What Byung Chul Han calls the violence of positivism, he calls it. I think that he might mean affirmation. I'm not sure. He calls it the violence of positivism. Now, multi-billionaires, he says, don't need to, not necessarily to censor you themselves, not directly. Granted, their obedient servants might do, for that is how they, can carry out more efficiently the orders assigned to them. But they don't necessarily need to do that anymore. Now what they do is they drown you with contradictory information all the time, contradictory information continually is coming to you. And this is designed to divide, to fragment your perception from separated from reality, from what is really occurring. Each social group receives its own version of the truth, algorithmically adjusted to maximize the anger, sometimes ire, or even stronger, against other groups. But never, he suggests, against the true architects and promoters of chaos. This is how it works. For example, generally speaking, the progressives or the liberals receive news about conservatives who, let's say, don't care enough about the planet and they are destroying the planet and not caring about it. Okay. Conservatives, on the other hand, see news about the liberals destroying civilization and so on. Both, he suggests, both have a partial truth. They are true up to a point, let us say, arguably, yeah, but both are wrong on the essential, the critical part. While fighting amongst themselves, ourselves, the different groups, all of us continue to purchase stuff from the same corporations, work for the same multi-billionaires, pay taxes that, when all is said and done, go ultimately, much of it is to subsidize these same they, the ones that design the confrontation among the groups to begin with. And this tribal narcissism almost is not, he suggests, a sociological accident. It is social engineering, financed, managed by the ultra-rich. A leaked document from Cambridge Analytica, you remember Cambridge Analytica was on the news a few years ago. When was it? Was it the Russia thing, I believe? Anyway, a leaked document from Cambridge Analytica showed that they can predict and direct or redirect, lead outbreaks of social violence, lead it to where they want it, with a precision rate of 78%. Even more revealing, they can turn legitimate protest movements into cultural wars that never actually threaten the economic system as it is. It never threatens them. That is never threatened. Each time that popular anger about economic structures or systems erupts, appropriate algorithms in the news all over the place can redirect that anger towards other things, towards identity issues, towards religion things, towards something else. But the masterstroke comes in the third phase, the solution. They provide us with the solution to all these problems. After months or years of information terror and tribal warfare, the people are psychologically exhausted and beg for order, order at whatever price. Would you be surprised if he tells you that the answer is already at hand, ready, wrapped, packaged, ready for delivery, for implementation? Digital surveillance, of course, for example. You wanted order, didn't you? Surveillance disguised as security. Or more work flexibility, no contracts, sold as freedom. More medication presented as self-care or self-help. What an industry that is. Each solution tightens their control, while all the while appearing to relieve you from it, to weaken that control. Smart cities, do you remember those? What happened to them? Will they come back? They were never intelligent city planning. They are like digital panopticons, that circular structural design we talked about at the beginning, where, a prison and there is a central observer who can see all the occupants of the jail, of the prison cells around it. And the problem there is that you never knew as a prisoner whether he was there, the vigilante was there or not, part of the anxiety. Design these cities, you could say, for constant observation, where each movement, each purchase, each conversation even recorded, sellable data to corporations. Remote work from the office might not be liberation from the office. After all, it might be colonization of your home by capital. Your living room has become the office. Do they pay you rent, by the way? Because they're saving a lot of money not paying rent for real estate, office real estate. They don't pay for the office. Perhaps, hopefully, you can deduct it from your taxes. The point is that your private life is disappearing. One more thing, the antidepressants deserve, he suggests, special attention in this scheme. This was in this particular talk. They do not cure social depression. They individualize it. They medicate it. They monetize it. They transform what is a natural response to the world we live in into, and all its problems and all its confusion, they turn it into a personal chemical imbalance in your brain, owned by the same owners of the same investment funds that create the conditions for depression in the first place. $47 billion annually, selling you the illusion that the problem is in your brain. In some cases it will be, but I don't know whether you saw one of the latest videos, posts with Tucker Carlson. He's interviewing someone about this specific issue, a doctor, saying how people then get addicted to it and how it is almost impossible because after years, months or years, that you try to get out of all these things, that is actually quite dangerous for your health too. A long interview, 2 hours. It's worth watching. It's a doctor, I forget his name. But anyway, so selling you the illusion that the problem is solely in your brain. Just like Freud used to convince his patients that the fact that they thought that they were being molested by their father or whatever, he would try to tell them that the problem was deep inside of them. They had really that inner wish, unspoken wish to mate with their father or their mother or whatever. His nephew was the person who brought advertising commercials to the United States. Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, who is considered, they call it the father of public relations. But it is a pioneer of propaganda. And he applied Freud's theories of the unconscious to manipulate public opinion and engineer consent. Bernays synthesized psychoanalytic concepts with crowd psychology to develop, he called it persuasion techniques for branding and products and also political campaigns later, aiming to manufacture demand and influence behavior for clients like General Electric and the American Tobacco Company. His work in public relations was instrumental in shaping modern consumerism that came of age in the 60s, yeah, and advertising, using unconscious desires and fears to sell products and ideas to the masses. The illusion that the problem is in your brain, then, they say, not in the system in which you happen to live. So create the trauma, sell the medicament, maintain the wound open. So you can continue selling the medicaments. An intelligent, effective power no longer needs to come with a baseball bat telling you or forcing you to obey. That's flood now. We'll see, perhaps not. It might need to be brought back. It could still be the last resort if too many people were to become aware and want to change the system or something. As an example, 900 people were arrested yesterday, the 7th of September, 2025, in London for protesting, I believe it was about Gaza. The question of what happened to the people's right to protest, that this is what people say, oh my goodness, why are they doing this? What happened? The people have a right to protest. How about freedom of speech, freedom of expression? That is no longer relevant to them. It doesn't bother them in the least. It's too evident. The questions are too evident. They're not worried by that. Now, if you, in this particular case, if you have to use force, you have to use force. In other words, bring back the fear. You could end up in jail. You could end up with, everywhere you go, it will be in your curriculum, in your resume. So if you're young, so we're back to instilling fear. But for the most part, really, until very recently, and in some cases still not, it was felt that they needn't to bring the tanks onto the streets. Rather than subjugating, openly forcing, openly coercing, they focus on leading you, cajoling you, redirecting your will towards what is favorable to them, much more sophisticated. That's why you believe, and you believe what they want you to believe you want. That's why many people defend the system, the same system that is breaking them. The psychosis is not that you have lost contact with reality, it is that reality itself was reconfigured to serve the interest of a specific clique, while 8 billion people live trapped in a created delirium, not even knowing that they are in a psychotic or psychic cage. This business of mental wellness, even the word wellness, I think I heard it for the first time in the United States in the 1980s. It was just beginning, wellness. This business of mental wellness, mental well-being, moves around $435 billion every year, selling but aspirins and placebos for a social cancer that they themselves created. It is not irony, it's a strategy. First, they alter your psychic, making jobs increasingly more and more precarious, which means to you increasing instability and worry and insecurity and social isolation in many cases. And then you have the media bombardment all the time. Then they sell you meditation apps, therapies, even spiritual retreats, and yoga and all kinds of things. BlackRock, the investment fund that manages 10 trillion in assets, has stocks obviously on companies that initially generate the burnt out, and at the same time startups that promise to get rid of that burnt out. And he calls this cannibal capitalism, monetizing the illnesses and diseases that they have themselves created. Oh, yes, meditations, corporate mindfulness, he calls it, or they call it. 1,000-year-old Buddhist practice that was there to reach illumination, enlightenment. He contends that has been hijacked, repackaged as a tool to better support the exploitation. It is called New Age. Companies offer meditation sessions to workers who work 80 hours a week, perhaps sometimes designing addictive algorithms. Amazon apparently constructs wellness cabins in the warehouses where workers often have to urinate in bottles because they cannot leave. They have to fulfill to get to the inhuman quotas. It is not self-help or self-cure. It's a kind of a psychological morphine for you to keep going, to put up one more day at a time without questioning anything. Quick therapies, that's another one. That's another masterstroke. Instead of trying to figure out, exploring why one entire generation of young people, many of them are collapsing mentally. What you get is they'll teach you techniques about focusing and redirecting. Breathe deeply. While your salary has less and less purchasing power, and so on. Okay, so this is this gentleman. Let me find his. Oops. Let me just for a second. I have to repeat his name. Byung Chul Han, a South Korean philosopher. It was just a summary of a talk that he gave. And let me know what you think. Was it exaggerated, do you think? I would like to know. Okay, thank you very much. That's the video for today. Thank you. Bye-bye.